I sat alone after my husband's funeral, until my stepson knocked and said, "My son still needs you." I thought I buried my past. But grief opened a door I never meant to unlock. That night, he didn't call me stepmom. He just held me, like he meant it. I never thought I'd say this out loud. Not to anyone, and definitely not here. But there's something about silence after a funeral that changes you. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, it presses against your chest and makes it hard to breathe. I sat at the edge of the bed in the beach house we'd once called our haven, holding the urn like it still pulsed with his warmth. But Mark was gone, and with him, a piece of me I didn't even know I still had left. We'd planned to scatter his ashes here. Just me and Caleb, his son. My stepson. I hadn't seen Caleb in months. He'd been away at school, and I wasn't even sure he'd want to come. But then, a knock. Gentle, measured. When I opened the door, there he was, taller, broader, but his eyes were still that same soft brown I remembered. "I'm here, Emma," he said. "My dad wanted this, and my son still needs you." That word, my son. It caught me off guard. I wasn't his mother, not really, but in that moment, I didn't feel like a widow, or a step anything, I just felt seen. And I hadn't felt that in a very, very long time. Before the funeral, before the ashes and the silence, there was just routine. Mark and I had been married almost 10 years. Not a fairy tale, not a disaster, just quiet, safe. We weren't the kind of couple that held hands in public or whispered secrets across the table. We coexisted. He provided, I managed. Somewhere along the way, love faded into logistics, groceries, doctor visits, car repairs. He didn't hurt me, but he didn't see me, either. Not really. I used to look at myself in the mirror and wonder if anyone would ever touch my face again. Not out of need or habit, but out of awe. Out of desire, out of care. When Mark got sick, I did everything. Held his hand through chemo. Made his food bland enough to keep down. Smiled when he couldn't. I don't resent it, but when he passed, I didn't cry like I thought I would. I just felt hollow. People said I was strong, but I didn't feel strong. I felt erased, like the woman I once was had quietly slipped away while no one was watching. And when Caleb showed up, it was the first time in years I felt that woman stir again. Caleb came into my life when he was 13. Awkward, quiet, all elbows and headphones and leftover pizza. He used to retreat into video games and only emerged when he was hungry or needed a ride. I was the woman who married his father. Nothing more. We were polite, distant, but not cold. I never tried to be his mom. He never asked me to. But then there were moments. Small, quiet ones. Like the night he brought me tea when I had a migraine. Unprompted. Or the morning I found a note on the fridge that read, "Don't forget to eat today, see?" He had a softness in him that he didn't show to the world. A tenderness he kept tucked beneath sarcasm and slouched hoodies. And then he left for college. And time blurred the edges. We'd text occasionally. A holiday check-in. A birthday message. I figured he was building his own life. So when he showed up after the funeral, older, taller, voice deeper than I remembered, I almost didn't recognize him. But then he said my name. Emma. And something inside me cracked. He looked at me like I wasn't invisible. Like I wasn't just his dad's widow. Like I was still someone. And God help me, I wanted to be seen that way again. The beach house hadn't changed. Same creaky porch steps. Same salt-stained windows. It was the place Mark and I once escaped to in better years. The irony? It felt more alive now with Mark gone and Caleb there. We were supposed to scatter the ashes the next morning. Caleb brought his own overnight bag. Said he figured I shouldn't be alone out here. We cooked a simple dinner. Ate in near silence, save for the waves and wind tapping against the glass. I thought that would be the end of it. But after I cleaned the dishes, Caleb handed me something, a folded envelope. The handwriting was Mark's. "I found this in Dad's desk," he said. "I think it's for you." My hands trembled. It wasn't long or poetic. Just a note, unfinished. Almost rushed. In it, Mark admitted something I hadn't expected. "Emma, I know I haven't always been kind. Truth is, I married you thinking Caleb needed a steady woman around. Not because I loved you the way you deserved. I hope someday you find someone who does." I couldn't breathe. It was like the foundation I'd built my marriage on, cracked wide open. I looked up, tears in my eyes, and Caleb was still there, watching me, not with pity, but with something gentler, steadier. "I didn't know," he said softly, "but I always thought you deserved more than what you got." And in that moment, my grief shifted. It wasn't just about losing Mark anymore. It was about realizing maybe I had never truly been chosen. Until now. I didn't sleep that night. The letter haunted me, not because Mark confessed a crime, but because he finally told the truth. A truth I hadn't let myself name out loud, that I had settled for being needed. Not loved. I had been a placeholder in someone else's family. I sat on the back deck of the beach house, wrapped in an old cardigan, listening to the tide roll in. Grief didn't come in waves. It was one long, suffocating pull. At some point, Caleb stepped outside. He didn't say anything, just sat beside me, a silent presence in the dark. We didn't touch. We barely even looked at each other. But the air between us shifted. Finally, he spoke. "You okay?" I gave a dry laugh. "Do I look okay?" He smiled. Soft. "No. You look like someone holding everything in." I didn't respond. I didn't have to, because a second later, I felt his hand brush mine. Not a grab, not an accident, just a quiet offering. I should have pulled away. Instead, I turned my hand over, palm up, and let him take it. We sat like that for minutes. Maybe hours, I don't remember. I just remember how steady his hand felt. How warm, how safe. His thumb moved gently, barely grazing my skin, and I felt something inside me flicker. Not lust, not yet, but presence, attention, the ache of being seen. Then he said it, almost a whisper. "You don't have to be alone in this." That broke me. I turned to him, tears in my eyes. "You're just a kid," I said, though we both knew that wasn't true anymore. "I'm not," he replied, voice low. "Not tonight." He didn't kiss me, not yet. But in the stillness, in the hush of waves and breath and breaking, we both knew something had already begun. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was both of us. One moment, we were sitting in the quiet, hands linked between us like a secret too fragile to name. The next, Caleb shifted slightly closer, his knee brushing mine. I didn't flinch. I didn't breathe. I looked at him, not the boy I helped raise, but the man he had become. And he looked at me not with pity, not with hesitation, but with reverence. His hand came up, slow and deliberate, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. His fingers lingered just a second too long, burning a trail I hadn't felt in years. "You're beautiful," he whispered, as if stunned by the realization, as if saying it made it more real. Something inside me cracked. The woman I used to be, the one who wanted, who longed, who felt, she came rushing back like breath into lungs too long empty. I leaned in, just enough to meet him halfway. And when our lips touched, it wasn't urgent or rushed. It was soft, slow, like a question being answered for the first time. His hands didn't grope. They held, grounded, one at my waist, the other at the back of my neck. I felt the strength in him. Yes, but more than that. The care. We moved together in stilted, hesitant motions, testing the shape of something we didn't yet understand. The cardigan slipped off my shoulders. His mouth found the hollow of my throat. I gasped, not because of surprise, but because I felt alive. And when we finally stood, still holding onto each other like something holy, he asked, "Are you sure?" I nodded. Not because I wasn't afraid. but because, for the first time in so long, I wanted to feel something that wasn't grief. I woke up to the sound of waves, softer now, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. The room was dim, sunlight creeping slowly through the gauzy curtains. I lay still, eyes open, heartbeat steady but not calm. Caleb's arm was draped across my waist, his breath warm against my shoulder. His presence was steady, gentle, familiar. And yet, everything had changed. I didn't feel regret, not exactly. But the silence between us had a different weight now. I slipped out of bed carefully, wrapping the cardigan around me again. My body still hummed with memory, his hands, his voice, the way he made me feel like more than a ghost. But my mind was racing. What had we done? What did it mean? In the mirror, I saw a woman I barely recognized. Flushed cheeks, mussed hair, eyes that didn't look haunted anymore, but wary, alive but cautious. Caleb stirred behind me. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough with sleep. I hesitated. "I don't know." He sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around his waist. "We don't have to define it," he said gently, "but I don't regret it." I turned toward him, emotions colliding like waves crashing on rock. "I'm afraid of what comes next." "I'm not," he said simply, "not if we face it together." And just like that, the air between us shifted again. The hours after were harder than the night itself. We went through the motions, coffee, folding blankets, light conversation about the weather. But beneath it all was a thrum of unspoken questions. Was this a mistake? Was I? I kept looking at Caleb, waiting for some flicker of regret. But there was none. He moved with the same quiet confidence, stealing glances like he didn't know how not to care. But me? I was unraveling. Not because of him, but because of me. I'd spent years following rules, being appropriate, holding the title of stepmother like a job description, never stepping outside the lines, even when I felt invisible inside them. Now I'd crossed that line, and I didn't want to step back. That terrified me more than anything. What would people think? That I seduced him? That I was grieving and vulnerable and desperate for touch? Maybe they'd be right. Maybe I was all of those things. But here's the truth I hadn't said out loud, even to myself. I didn't feel used. I felt chosen, seen, needed, in a way Mark never made me feel. Still, guilt curled around the edges of my joy. I wasn't just a woman. I was his father's widow. And he was someone's son. Even if he wasn't mine. "I don't want this to be a mistake," I whispered once, when we passed each other in the narrow hallway. "It's not," he said, "not to me." And part of me believed him. But part of me still braced for the fallout. Because even when something feels right, that doesn't mean the world will understand it. Later that afternoon, we walked down to the shoreline. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of salt and something that felt like closure. Caleb held the urn. I held the letter. We didn't speak much as we scattered Mark's ashes into the waves. I watched them disappear into the surf, mixing with foam and sea in memory. I thought I'd feel relief. I didn't. I just felt still, empty, in a different way. Back at the house, Caleb found me sitting on the floor, the letter in my lap. "Can I read it?" he asked gently. I nodded. He read in silence, his jaw clenched halfway through, and by the end, his eyes had gone glassy. "He never told me any of this," Caleb said. "I didn't know he married you out of duty." I looked up. Neither did I. He knelt beside me. "But I know why I came back." I swallowed hard. "Why?" He reached out, tucking my hair behind my ear like he had the night before. "Because you were the one holding him together. And now, someone needs to hold you." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat was too tight. But something settled in that moment, something real. This wasn't about replacing Mark. It wasn't about rebellion or loneliness. It was about two people, long unseen, finally recognizing each other in the wreckage. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to begin again. We left the beach house the next morning. No promises, no plans, just a quiet ride home with the windows cracked and the silence less heavy than before. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if this becomes something lasting or something we carry in secret for the rest of our lives. But I do know this, that night didn't feel wrong. It felt honest, human, necessary. Maybe that makes me naive, maybe even selfish. But I had been a ghost in my own life for too long. And when Caleb looked at me, he didn't see the role I played, stepmother, widow, the woman left behind. He saw me, the version I had buried under years of responsibility, silence, and careful choices. And for once, I let myself be that woman again. Not for Mark, not for anyone else. Just for me. Do I carry guilt? Of course. There's no clean version of this story. But sometimes the things that save us don't come in the form we expect. So now I ask you, if you were sitting in my place, holding that letter, staring into the eyes of someone who truly saw you, would you have said no? Or would you have said yes, like I did?